Okay, so welcome to 8-3 low to mid training. Okay, this is obviously for the winter 2023 term, winter 2023 to winter 2024. These classes are actually meant to be the more fun class between A2 and to A3. And I'm not sure if you guys know about V1. Okay, so it's like a subsidiary of V1. It's focused mainly on reading rather than reading and listening. And we go over stories. So in the low class, you're going to see more story-based, and in the mid, we do non-fiction stories. Okay, so I'll explain more about that as we go through. Having a look at the actual contents. So I've split up this lesson into going through low fully first and then mid fully first. They have some similarities. However, there's a big difference in the type of reading as a whole. Okay. One thing that they do share in common, however, is summary writing and scanning. Okay, so you notice that these two parts are quite similar. And there's project and homework. Okay, so although there are some similarities, the actual class structure does vary. The annoying thing about this class is that it's separated into tab and workbook parts. Okay, so it gets a bit confusing because you're switching between the two quite frequently. However, on each slide, I've labeled it whether it's tab or workbook. So if you're not clear, just like ask me again. Okay. Um, so again, low is made up of Mega, Giga, and Terra, and mid is Bridge, Par, Birdie. Okay. Any questions so far? Anything that's not looking right to you? Cool. Okay, so I'm just gonna jump into, we're gonna start with low. It's the easier of the two. So first of all, just to give you an overview of what low looks like I've mentioned already, there's a smart textbook, so the tab lesson, as well as a storybook. Okay, so the students will have this book in class. There's also a homework book called Was to Chunk. Don't worry about that right now. I cover it at the end because both low and mid share this. Um, Something you should know, this is a story-based lesson. Okay, so each week you're going to be seeing a different story. Some stories go over 2 weeks. However, in the early 6 weeks, you're going to see um, just the just one story per week. Okay. Charities. I think your name was not on the list.
Okay, maybe I will stay because this was the link they gave me.
Do you teach were you told to do an A3 workshop?
Yeah, A3 Mega to Birdie though. So,
Okay, yeah, no, this is
okay,
it. So you're in the right
okay,
place.
okay,
Don't
okay.
worry.
Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So like I was saying, yeah, so each week we'll have one story. However, in the latter weeks, the story goes over 2 weeks. Okay, these are all fictional stories, which usually have a moral behind it. Okay, so this class focuses mainly on comprehension. We're teaching the kids basically how to read and understand. But further than that, we're trying to create some interest and discussion behind everything. Okay. So when I say comprehension, I also mean like topic discussion, talking about emotions, motifs, kind of introducing them into reading as a whole. Very different from what we do in A2, where we teach them how to break down a passage. Here we're teaching them to enjoy a story, okay, question things, understand why characters do certain actions, and so on and so forth. There's also a heavy focus on vocabulary and grammar, especially at the beginning of the class. To be honest, I don't really go too hard on this. However, it is very useful if you want to get the right type of understanding during that lesson. The last component is of summary and literary device. And students, especially in the lower levels, right? So Mega Giga, really struggle with this. They tend to just copy paste, right? Whatever they read in the book, they think that's the summary and they write it down. So this is something that is a bit of a challenge in the early weeks. However, the lessons are structured that you'll be teaching them a skill towards bettering that as we go further. And the main part, I think, of this lesson to make it fun is projects. The projects that Changnam provide are usually a bit boring. Okay, so I'm going to show you some alternatives that you can do in order to make it more engaging and more fun, both for you and the students. Okay, so starting with the first part of low, you're gonna be seeing, we're gonna start with just the general structure. Okay, so just like every other class in Changdam, we have login, attendance, review test. And then the first hour is made up of that vocabulary and like topic introduction. Here it mentions in-class reading. However, I've noticed that this part kind of spills into the second hour. Okay. I spend more time getting the students interested in the topic or introducing them to the story before actually just jumping straight into the reading. And also, I feel that if you start the reading before break and then have to continue it after, it just doesn't flow as well. Okay, so I kind of push that part into the second hour and I minimize the summary writing time. So as you can see here, it says 40 minutes. I probably do it in about 15 to 20. Then story analysis in the final hour. Again, I lower this time to about 10 minutes and I extend project a bit longer so that I can actually help each group individually. Okay. This breakdown is really easy to follow, but what it doesn't show you is the separation of tab and book. Okay, so I'll be doing that as I go through each part. Any questions so far? Are we all comfortable? Sweet. All right, so the first part of the low syllabus starts on the tab. Okay, so you're gonna see the first page looks something like this. It's just an introduction to the story. So at the top right is the name of the story, called Three Trucks in the Snow. This is from Terra, I believe. Okay, so within this first page, it has two pictures from the story itself. And within these pictures, there's these little like bubbles. This is just to elicit from students, try to get some words that they might be familiar with, just getting them like comfortable with what's about to happen. I give them about 2 minutes. They just fill in. I walk around, proctor, and so on. And then we start the discussion. Okay, so I'll ask, okay, David, what words did you write for the first picture? Why did you write that? Okay, so just purely looking at those pictures, getting them into that point of view. And then from there, I start building a discussion around it. So this is where I'm going to introduce themes from the story. I asked them stories about like something related to their lives. Have they gone skiing before? Did anything bad happen? Oh, what did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Okay, so elicit as much as you can, especially in personal experiences. And then also what I've noticed, like if I can't get them to go where I want them to go, just a quick video or some pictures just to like guide them towards where the story is themed. Okay, so in Three Trucks in the Snow is about a disabled person who has to change their like equipment in order to manage. Okay, so I want that to go in, the discussions go in that direction. So I'm going to throw in some media cards that like, oh, what happens when you meet in an accident? Oh, what happens if you can't do things like everyone else? Okay, so just to get them into that situation. And then I move to the prediction part. So if you see at the bottom over here, it says prediction. This is just guessing what's going to happen in the story. I kind of turn this into a game. So what I do is I'll start with like the front student. Okay, so looking at the pictures, let's start a story together. What's this girl's name? Okay, what are they doing? Okay, so they start like, oh, once upon a time, Sam went to the snow slopes. She was with a friend, blah, blah, blah. And then I'll stop them and move to the next kid. Okay, keep the story going. Okay, so here they kind of feeding off each other. I'm doing minimum speaking and they're using what they heard and trying to predict the next part. Okay, so the kids really like it and it minimizes me speaking a lot and them maximized. Okay, so this is the first part of the lesson as a whole. And from here, we're going to move into the vocabulary part. Okay, so you'll see that this next page, which is also on the tab, has words within the story itself. Okay, so what the textbook wants you to do is use the passage it provides to find context clues. What I've noticed, especially in Mega, this doesn't work. Okay, the kids don't know the words around it. They can't understand positive, negative feelings. So it doesn't really work as well. However, having some media cards again to match the words that are provided way better. Okay, show, don't tell. That gets them more familiar with what's about to be included in the story, and also like helps them think along the ways that you want to guide this lesson in. What I do is I have the kids also write down the English definition. I don't necessarily recommend this, but what I'm going to show you in the next slide maybe will make more sense as why I do this. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. It is about 8 questions, I think, overall. So I mentioned that I make the kids write down, and that's because I provide them, well, I make them make a little mini summary book. Okay, so looks something like this. It's just a foldable book, and there's about 6 pages within. And on each part, so after we have like the topic discussion, so they'll know that the topic is about skiing. Okay, and I kind of take the name of the story, so 3 Trucks in the Snow, and we make a little cover page. Okay, so it's just like a mini project activity. And then from there, the first page will go over the vocab. So the vocab that's listed here will write each word and just a short definition of what's happening. And then I go on into further things like characters, major events, summary kind of, because there is a portion of summary for this lesson. And then the last thing, rating and recommendation. The reason why I do this is because I'm sure you guys notice in most reading classes, you're going to get kids that just are in space. They're completely elsewhere. And this kind of keeps them on their toes because they have to keep making notes, right? What I tell them is, okay, as soon as you see a new character, just scream it out. Teach your character, right? They'll just be on it. And then we're already writing it down. And the major events, I always tell them, do you see a problem? Oh, did something change? Is someone unhappy? Okay, so these are things that they're already looking for. It gets them in that preview predictive mode, in a search mode, instead of just in a reactive mode to what I say. Okay, so allowing your kids to be more proactive, setting them up with structures that are gonna help them be better students instead of you like dictating everything that happens in the class. You don't have to do this, obviously, it's just a suggestion. However, it's something that has worked for me in the past. Okay. So next we move into, this will take you probably into the second hour. Okay, and this is where I start the reading as a whole. So this reading is in their own storybook. We read together. Okay, so it's not something that like, oh, break down the passage, look for topic thesis and that kind of thing. Nope. Okay, so it's individual reading. Well, not individual, but as class reading. You can choose the method that you feel comfortable with. I cold call, kind of popcorn cold calling. And we separate it into like maybe paragraphs or like just important parts at a time. Obviously, make sure you read the story fully first so that you can find the parts that you think, is like suitable to stop at. And when you choose that point, this is where you start asking some comprehension questions, challenging the students on like vocab words or predictions, etc. It's very straightforward, and it's really easy to like elicit from the kids, right? Especially a fictional story. I noticed that kids just generally are more enthusiastic and interested in. Try to minimize personal experience here, just because what happens is one kid will go off about how they had a ski trip, and then kids will get confused, which is the story, which is the personal experience, and it's just a bit confusing. So keep the conversation to the story itself. It will take some time to get through. The story is generally 2 to 3 pages. I guess Mega might be a bit shorter, but I know Terra is about 3 pages long. And yeah, make sure you vote in conversation. There are comprehension questions that come up after this. Okay, so when you're reading with the kids, make sure that you're pointing out those comprehension parts. So if I just quickly show you here. So this is in the tab, there's about 6 or 7 questions. Okay, so when you're prepping, have a look at these questions so that you know where to stop in the story in order for the kids to like highlight, underline, and know that this is an important part. Okay, it just helps justification later. So this is something to keep in mind. The actual comprehension is pretty straightforward. It's not like just A, B, C, D picking. There's actually full sentences. Personally, I recommend having the kids try on their own first, or maybe work in pairs, and then going over it as a class, right? Something I didn't mention, but I think is important. These stories are in PDFs on your branch's drive. Okay. So what I do is I pull it up onto the TV, and so they can just follow along with me, and I'm able to like circle, underline stuff on the TV as well. Or if you have like a PDF viewer app which allows you to do it on your tab, it's very useful. Okay, just helps with justification and helps the kids visually see what you're doing. Any questions so far? Sorry, I think I was speed running a little bit. Cool. So the scanning comprehension is on the tab, as I've mentioned. And the next slide, in my opinion, is extremely unnecessary. Okay, so this is the retelling slide. And if you looked at the structure at the beginning, it says it's 15 minutes to do this. I don't do this. Okay. However, if your branch wants you to, so maybe relay this back to your TL, TM, MC, and ask them, is this necessary for me to do? Okay. In my branch, we don't do this at all. It's just tedious. What you're expected to do is replay part of the passage, and the kids have to fill in the blanks. And then at the next points, they have to record themselves reading the passage. Okay, so down here. If you have a class of 15 kids and they're all trying to read out at the same time into a tablet, it's going to be absolute chaos. So personally, I skip this. However, like I've said, I'm not sure what your branch requires, so make sure you ask before just going on to it. Okay. It's a waste of time and it doesn't actually teach them anything. So the next part, however, is really useful, and this is both between tab and paper. The tab itself provides a full summary, okay, a full overview and summary of the story. So they break it down into like 8 points, and these sentences are directly out of the storybook. Okay, so students are just expected to look in the storybook and try to find the missing part. It's pretty easy. However, there are some challenges that come with this, right? Um, so what you need to stress is that this is not a summary. This is an overview. Okay. Hopping down straight from a book is not the right way of doing it. Further on this tab page below has a paraphrasing part. Okay, so they give you sentences and you're expected to like just fill in, change one word. What I do is I challenge them further to try and change the sentence. Okay, so if you look at number 2 here, it says Laurie had lost her leg in an accident when she was 5. Okay, so all they want you to do obviously is change accidents with car crash. What I try to do instead is switch the whole sentence around. Okay, so swap the subject and the object. So instead of starting with Laurie, I'm going to start when she was 5. Laurie lost her leg in a car crash. Okay, so it's just teaching them to switch things up and also some grammar parts, as well as like how paraphrasing actually works. It's not just changing one word. This is really helpful, especially in the early weeks when you're trying to teach them what some basic summary skills, how to shorten parts, how to reiterate, etc. What I do as well is I give them writing paper, okay, to write the summary out, which I then collect and I'm able to like give them a quick grade. And you don't have to correct every single sentence or every single word, but just like a letter grade so that they know what their standard is at the moment. Okay. Any questions about this? Cool. So the next part is gonna be, oh, by the way, this writing, speaking, discussion, reading, this is your second hour. Okay, so the reading parts will take you around 20 to 25 minutes, I would say. Comprehension is about 10 to 15, and then the summary, whatever time left. It might spill a little into the third hour, that's completely okay. Depends how long your project is gonna be. Starting in the third hour, however, you should be aiming to be on story analysis. Okay, so this part is when we apply the story themes into our real lives. Okay, so we do a literary device, but apart from doing a literary device, I try to do some emotional training. Okay, so in this case, the story that we spoke about, like I said, was 3 Tracks in the Snow. So they're talking about disabled people. So I will start asking questions about how does Korea cater to the disabled? Okay, what do you see around? Oh, and the kids will say on the street you can see the tiles with the dots. And I'm like, okay, cool. How about in stores? How about in buildings? Okay. I then challenge them further to talk about like if they were in that position, how would they feel? I'll throw in some controversial points. Okay, so I love doing this with lower levels because they get so quickly challenged. I'm like, but there's so few disabled people. Do we need to do all this extra stuff? Okay, and you'll get the one extreme leftist just being, teacher, how can you say such a thing? Right, and it's great. As soon as you do that, you're gonna have the kids have this emotional responses, and they're gonna feed off each other way more. Okay, be problematic as a teacher. It's really important. It helps get the people going. Don't spend too much time on this. Okay, so maximum I would say about 15 minutes. And then what I do is I use this as a segue into my project. Okay, so the project that the tab provides is a thinking project. And it's just basically like write a letter or in this case, find some problems that your students might have in their lives and then think of solutions. It's just not fun. Instead, try to come up with a more engaging project, I recommend. Okay, so you don't even have to come up with an original one. If you have a look on the media cards in each part, you'll notice that many past instructors have already put up some stuff. So, for example, in this case, I found make a new device or a new like tool to help disabled people do a sport. Okay. This doesn't mean that you should just like blindly give them this and then blank paper and expect them to put all this together. I recommend also making a little worksheet. Okay. So if I can show you. Okay, so a little worksheet that might look something like this. Okay, just so that they know what to do. This is for the mid class actually, so I'll go through this later. But something that we can do together in class and having a section for them to draw, as opposed to just giving them blank paper and then having questions on the screen. Okay, just organizes things much better and it helps them know exactly what they're doing. Okay. Any questions about the project or about anything else covered for low? Okay, cool. So let's move on then to the mid section. So again, mid is made up of bridge, par, and birdie. It uses both the smart textbook and a storybook. However, these stories are no longer fiction, they're nonfiction, topic-based. So it's very similar to the reading portions of C1, C2 classes. It's very similar to C2 actually. Okay, the difference is each week covers just one topic. Week 13, however, doesn't have a story. So you're going to be doing like a review class. It's a bit strange, but it's still doable. In this case, we're not focusing so much on comprehension, but rather we're trying to build discussion. Okay, so it's different from A2 in the sense that in A2, we just broke down the passage, tried to find topic, thesis, blah, 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 blah. Here, we're going to discuss, okay, get them interested, challenge them further on like vocab and experiences, just trying to make it a more fun and engaging class. Okay, something that you would hope to be like a social studies class or something along those lines. There are some weird topics in between, like soil erosion. There's still a cannibalism subject week, which is just, I don't know. Yeah. But there's also some good topics, right? So in week 1, you'll see culture in Birdie, which is really fun. And yeah, there's also summarizing and paraphrasing components, and then the projects like the low levels. Okay, so the overview structure is quite similar to what we saw in low, except in the first hour, we have some skill theory and practice. Okay, so these are linked to what they learn in A2. Okay, so It's just, again, breaking down the passage into topic, thesis, blah, blah, blah. However, I don't put too much stress on this. As you know, like A2 kind of shoves this down your throat a lot. The kids are sick of it, in my opinion, and you want this to be the more fun class for them, right? So even though we have to cover this, I don't spend too much time, maybe maximum 15 minutes. Okay. It looks a bit like this. Hold on. Okay, so it still covers the theme of the lesson. However, it's forcing them to again find the topic, main idea, and details. You can just quickly go over this. So you can just remind them, oh, in A2, what did you guys learn this week? Oh, we learned how to skim a passage. Okay, what does skimming a passage make up of? Oh, it makes up of topic, main idea, so on and so forth. And then I would give them this little exercise. There's two exercises. I usually just do one. So you can pick whichever one is better. The nice thing about this, however, like I said, it is linked to the topic as a whole. So it does already get them started, as you might have them, oh, teacher, what does this mean? And then you can kind of get into the discussion of the topic of culture. However, I try to avoid repeating what is done in a previous class, right? Um, Again, it might be branch dependent. Your branch might want you to spend a lot of time on this. Make sure you relay back with your TAs and so on. But in my case, I spend maximum 15, 20 minutes and then I move straight into discussion. So for discussion, we use the tab. Okay, so this was workbook, but then we move into the tab. And the tab gives us some preview questions. Okay, so describe some cultural practices you think is specific to your country. I will spread this further, right? I'll ask them about, okay, what other cultures do you know of? Can you tell me about Japanese culture, American culture, um, Egyptian culture? Do you know of any cultures that have disappeared? Do you know what culture will be like in the future, maybe? How will things change? Are we becoming more westernized? Okay, so remember these are mid kids, so you want to push them further than just the basic conversation skills and try to make them think outside of their comfort zones. Um, Again, elicit as much as you can, have lots of media cards to build discussion around this. Um, I think videos are useful, but I think a video over 1 minute, 30 seconds is too much, right? You kind of lose interest and there's not enough, unless you're stopping and pausing in between to talk about it, don't go beyond 90 seconds. So about a 1 minute video, 1 minute, 30 seconds, just to get them more excited or to like introduce something maybe about your background and culture, right? For example, I'm from South Africa, so they get so confused. They're like, no, you're not. Okay, you're from India. And I'm like, okay, yeah, but I can be from wherever I want. And then we build discussion around those things. And then we just spread further of how culture has changed and so on. So don't be restricted to just the questions that's provided. At the bottom of this page, there is a breakdown of what the passage is going to talk about. Okay, so it says a word map, but in fact, these are the main ideas that you're going to see in the reading passage. Therefore, try to take time to go through each one, just explaining what they are, okay, and preview like what it is about and how it relates to culture as a whole. Again, have media cards to kind of show examples and so on. Okay. This should take you to the end of the first hour. It might spill a little into the second hour, depending on how much of the skill theory you covered. But by the second hour, within the first 10 minutes, you should be moving into the passage. Okay. So Changdam wants us to outline the passage in the same way that A2 outlines the passage. I do make them do this, but again, I minimize the time. Okay, so I give them about 4 minutes and I have them just underline or whatever thesis, main idea, topic, and some major details. However, from there, I do what I've done in low, where we read each paragraph together. Okay, this just again helps build discussion better and also helps them understand something interesting rather than just knowing what the thesis is. Okay, so if you remember, A2 is just about skills, methodologies, not understanding anything, just knowing what to do. And then I would say A3 is more discussion, being more creative, trying to enrich their minds rather than just be making them well trained. Okay. That being said, as you read, point out transition words, repeated words, and main ideas. This is just like a byproduct of reading, right? You can say, oh, what other transitions can you see? Oh, there's however, oh, there's additionally, so on and so forth. So we're still doing that. We're going to highlight and underline, but we're going to spend time talking about, oh, what are intangible artifacts? What utensils are used in your home? Why are these important in our lives? Okay, so have media cards again ready for discussion. What you can do is have a PPT for each paragraph. It is kind of tedious, but it does help you better organize. That being said, I think also just having media cards is sufficient. So it's up to you, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Next, on the tab, you have the actual outline, and in each paragraph, they break it down into topic, main idea, and supporting details. This, for you, will be really useful for your prep. However, it's extremely time consuming for the kids, right? So don't have them type out every single sentence. It'll just take ages, especially because, I don't know, they want to like finger typer one at a time, so it takes ridiculously long. Instead, this is a good chance to teach them like more abbreviating keyword techniques. Okay, so just putting in short form so that they have an outline, but it's just as basic as possible. The reason is later on, you're going to have them writing a summary anyway. So I would say this can take a maximum of like 8 minutes and shouldn't go beyond that. Okay, so the reading is going to take you about 20 to 25 because there's about 5 paragraphs, followed by this, which will take you another 8. And then we have some comprehension questions. Okay, so this is also on the tab. For Birdie, there's 8 questions. I think for Bridge and Par, it's maybe 6 or 7. Okay, so it's slightly lower. These questions are identical to their A2 classes. So it's TOEFL style question types. And in my opinion, I get sick of these by the time it's Thursday. So although we're forced to do it, do not put too much emphasis, right? What I tend to do is, as each week in A2 focuses on one question type, I'll do the same in the A3 class. Okay, so if we covered main idea or detailed questions, that's the question I'll go through. Okay, so don't make this too test-based. However, at my first branch, I was forced to focus on this. So in that case, whatever your branch wants, you're gonna have to do, but you might be able to find some leg room and adjust accordingly, right? If you can, however, yeah, spend 15 minutes maximum, get them to bash this out, and then that. Because I like to focus more on the actual project, okay? So before moving into the project, you have one more paraphrasing and summary writing. What I do actually, I do this first before the questions. Okay, so according to the segment guide, you should be doing the outline, the comprehension questions, and then the summary. I do it the other way around. So I do the outline, then the summary, because I feel like those two fit in quite well. And then I move to the questions. Okay. For the summary, again, it's the same as low. So you teaching them paraphrasing skills. Some of this is a bit confusing because the structure, they want you to like switch it around. So you're gonna have to guide the students quite carefully here. So don't just have them, oh, just do this, but guide them, do it together in the early weeks so that they understand. And yeah, the summary writing, the nice thing about this, unlike low, they have this in their books. Okay. So getting them to do about an 80-word summary or maybe even 50 words, just covering again from those the outline where they had topic, thesis, main ideas, major details. Any questions? Are we all good? Cool. So quickly just moving to the project part. Again, like I mentioned, the projects from Changdam are not very inspiring. Okay, so you're highly encouraged to make your own. In this case, they give you make a list of tangible and intangible. So I don't recommend using this. So I'm just going to show you a project that I did. It looks something like this. Okay, so it's make your own culture. And I used the passage as a guide to help break down what I wanted from them in the project. Okay, so the passage itself spoke about artifacts, utensils, and some other things. So I tried to include that. So I was like, list 3 artifacts that your culture will have. And then I give them an example. I'll have swords and sunglasses or plushies or whatever it is, right? Utensils. What utensils does your culture use? And common animals. What don't you like, or what do you like? What is not allowed in your culture? Okay, so trying to build something around this, and then also having a handout to go along with it so that you can actually do it as a class. So even though you're spreading them into groups, I'm gonna have my PPT up, and then each segment of my project is gonna be associated with the segment that they're doing. Okay. Again, this just creates more structure as opposed to just giving them a blank piece of paper and saying, do this. Um, you can do short presentations. A3 class doesn't require recordings, which is really nice. Okay, so feel free to do individual projects and groups. It's up to you. And yeah, just have fun with it. Any questions on that? Cool. Moving into then the last part, which is the homework. This forms part of both the low and mid. Okay, the books are slightly different. I think low has like a smaller B4 size. B4? Not really sure of the size. Maybe A5 size book, and then mid is A4 size. Each week this is where their vocab words are, and they'll have vocab on the left page, and on the right page is like an activity sheet. So it says something like definition, synonyms, crossword puzzle. In week 1, I recommend at the end of class just run them through this, right? Because they're going to be really confused on what to do. So just give them some guiding examples to help them, especially for like crosswords. I know my kids like were like, what does that mean? And same for analogies, right? So they won't know that analogy means opposite meaning. The thing that they really, really struggle with, however, is this. So this is the chunk list, and it's ridiculous. So the first part is understandable. You put in a word, you write the definition, and you make a sentence with that word. But then this bottom part is which is a bit confusing for kids, which is the chunk. Okay, so basically they give you these chunks, so are based on the exchange of, and then they give you a synonym with it. So are founded on the trade of. So what they expect the kids to do is first write the chunk with the original and then make their own sentence with the chunk using the synonym. Okay, so try to explain that to a mega kid, it doesn't go very well, right? So what I do is I just keep it simple and I just use the first one. So adopted different versions of, right? And then I'm gonna try to get them to change the beginning part and the end part before that chunk. Okay, so instead of other ancient civilizations, many different countries adopted different versions of K-pop or of pop music. Okay, so they just try to fill in words before and after to make a new sentence. Make sure you go over this quite thoroughly with them, as they do definitely struggle to understand what they're supposed to do. And that's pretty much it. Any questions about anything? Homework clear?
Oh, I've got a question.
Yes.
Okay, so because I've done the A3 low before,
Yeah.
and so like the summary part for the students, I think when I did it, did more like the verbal retelling is what we called it instead of the